I remember the exact moment my life split in two, before Daniel shouted, and after. We had just finished dinner. Lily was coloring at the table, and I was rinsing the dishes when his voice cut through the calm like a blade. "Lock the door, now." It wasn't a suggestion or even a plea. It was a command that came from somewhere deep, primal, and urgent. My hands shook as the plate I was holding slipped and cracked in the sink. For a moment, I couldn't move. I just stared at him, wide-eyed, confused, my heart stuttering in my chest. I had never heard Daniel use that tone with me, not once in all the years of our marriage. It was the kind of voice you use when death is at the door. Lily's crayon rolled off the table and she looked at her father, frightened by the suddenness of it. Her big brown eyes, usually full of mischief, shimmered with unasked questions. Daniel had already moved across the living room, faster than I thought possible, reaching for the deadbolt. His hand trembled slightly, but his face was stone, sharp, and focused. I stumbled forward, unsure whether I was helping or getting in the way, but the urgency in his voice pushed me. I locked the second latch, my palms sweating against the cold metal. "What's happening?" I whispered, but he didn't answer. His silence terrified me more than any explanation could have. Outside, the evening had grown heavy. The sky painted a deep indigo as the first stars fought their way through the horizon. Normally, it was the kind of night I loved, when the world seemed quiet and safe, the neighborhood tucked into its routines. But tonight, the silence was different. It was the kind of silence that listens. I thought I heard footsteps on the gravel, but I told myself it was my imagination. Then came the sound of something brushing against the window pane. Deliberate, slow. Lily whimpered and pressed herself against me, burying her face into my sweater. My throat tightened. Someone was out there. Daniel put a finger to his lips and gestured for us to move away from the windows. He crouched low, like a soldier who had done this before, and it struck me how practiced his movements seemed. In that moment, I realized this wasn't the first time he had prepared for something like this. It was the first time I was seeing it. My stomach knotted. Who was my husband, really? And what did he know that I didn't? He glanced at me with eyes darker than I had ever seen them, and for the first time, I wasn't sure if I wanted the answer. We shuffled into the hallway, the lights off, the house holding its breath with us. My ears strained for every sound, the creak of a floorboard outside, the faint metallic rattle of a doorknob. Lily clung to me, and I tried to keep my hands steady on her shoulders, whispering soothing nonsense I didn't believe myself. My mind raced with possibilities. A burglar, a stalker, someone random off the street. But deep down, in the marrow of my bones, I felt this was personal. Whoever was out there wasn't here for our TV or my jewelry. They were here for us. The knock came suddenly, sharp and decisive, against the glass of the front window. I flinched so hard Lily let out a cry. The sound was wrong, too confident, too familiar, as if the person knew we were inside holding our breath. Then a voice followed, muffled but clear. "Harper," my name, just my name, stretched out like a secret he wasn't supposed to know. My knees almost buckled under me. I looked at Daniel, desperate for an explanation, but his jaw was clenched so tight I thought his teeth would crack. His eyes burned with something I'd never seen before. Recognition. He mouthed one word to me. Don't answer. Don't move. Don't make a sound." My chest rose and fell like I had run a marathon, every instinct screaming at me to demand answers, to scream back at the faceless man who somehow knew my name. But the gravity in Daniel's expression pinned me still. He knew this voice, and that terrified me more than the knock itself. My husband had been waiting for this night, and I had been blind to it. Every strange look, every late-night pacing, every time he double-checked the locks, it all clicked into place. The danger wasn't new. It had just arrived at our door. Lily began to whimper, a soft, desperate sound muffled against my shirt. I stroked her hair, whispering that everything would be okay, but the lie tasted bitter on my tongue. My gaze flicked to the door. The knob trembled once, then again, as if being tested. Daniel's hand went to a drawer near the kitchen. He pulled it open slowly, carefully, and revealed something I had never seen before. A small black revolver, hidden under dish towels. My stomach dropped. He held it like he had held it 1,000 times. My gentle, quiet husband, the man who read bedtime stories and fixed broken lamps, was standing there with a gun in his hand, and I realized I knew so little about the man I loved. The voice outside grew louder, more insistent. "Harper, I know you're in there. Open the door, sweetheart." Sweetheart. The word crawled under my skin like an infestation. I had never heard this man's voice in my life, but the way he said it made me feel owned, as if I belonged to him. Daniel's knuckles whitened around the gun. His chest rose with controlled breaths, his eyes fixed on the door as though he could will it into staying shut. I clutched Lily tighter, her tiny heartbeat pounding against my ribs. I wanted to scream for help, to run, but Daniel's voice echoed in my head. Lock the door. Now. It was the only thing keeping us alive. And then came the moment that changed everything. The footsteps outside stopped. Silence draped itself over the house, thick and suffocating. For a heartbeat, I thought maybe he had left, that the nightmare was over before it had even begun. But then, so close I could almost feel the breath against my cheek, the voice whispered through the crack of the door. I've found you. Daniel's shoulders tensed, and for the first time, I saw raw fear in his eyes. He turned his head slowly, his lips barely moving as he said the words that made my blood turn to ice. He's found us. Daniel didn't move for what felt like forever. He just stood there, gun in hand, eyes locked on the door as if his sheer will could keep the man on the other side from bursting through. My chest was tight, air scraping my lungs with every shallow breath. Lily's small fingers dug into my side, her fear raw and unfiltered, a mirror of mine. But Daniel, he was something else. He wasn't scared in the way I was. His fear was precise, calculated, the kind you see in someone who knows exactly what's coming. That terrified me more than the stranger's voice. What had Daniel been hiding all these years? The silence stretched, broken only by the hum of the refrigerator in the kitchen and the pounding of blood in my ears. Then, another sound, the faintest scrape of something metallic, sliding against the doorframe. A tool. He was trying to get in. My pulse surged and I whispered, "Daniel, call the police." But Daniel shook his head, his eyes never leaving the door. "Not yet," he muttered, his tone sharp, final. "Not yet?" My stomach churned. Who waits to call for help when someone is breaking into their home? Unless you already know the police can't help you. The sound of the tool stopped, replaced by low, muffled laughter. It was the kind of laugh that stripped the warmth from a room, slow and deliberate, full of confidence. "She's mine, Daniel. You can't keep her from me forever," the voice crooned. My throat closed, and I almost dropped Lily in shock. The man knew my husband's name. He knew me. The world spun as I clutched the wall for balance. My mind screamed with questions I wasn't sure I wanted answered. Daniel knew this man. He wasn't just some stranger. He was here for me. Daniel's jaw flexed, his knuckles tight on the revolver. "Harper, go upstairs. Take Lily and stay in the bedroom." His voice was steady, commanding, but there was a tremor in it, one only I could catch after years of marriage. He was afraid, but he was also preparing himself for something final. "No," I whispered, shaking my head. "Not without you." He didn't argue, but his silence was louder than any words. It was the silence of a man ready to face something he'd been running from for too long. I took Lily's hand and guided her up the stairs, though every step away from Daniel made me feel like I was tearing my own skin off. She whimpered, asking me what was happening, and I told her it was a game, that Daddy was just protecting us. The lie burned on my tongue, but what else could I say? That a stranger outside our door claimed I belonged to him, that her father held a gun like he had been waiting for this night since before she was born. No, I had to keep her safe from the truth as much as from the man outside. From the bedroom window, I peeked out into the dark yard. The porch light flickered faintly, casting long, jagged shadows across the gravel. I thought I saw movement, a figure slipping from one side of the yard to the other, but the darkness swallowed it before I could be sure. I closed the curtains quickly, heart hammering. Lily crawled onto the bed, clutching her stuffed rabbit, whispering prayers in the way only a child can. I wanted to join her, to surrender to the innocence of faith, but all I felt was dread clawing at my spine. Then, the sound of splintering wood echoed through the house. My blood froze. The door was giving way. I grabbed my phone with trembling hands and dialed 911, whispering urgently to the operator. My voice was a quiver of desperation as I gave our address, explained someone was breaking in. She told me to stay calm, that officers were on their way, but her voice was miles away, irrelevant against the crash of footsteps below. He was inside. The stranger was inside our home, and Daniel was alone with him. Lily's muffled sobs filled the room as I clutched her close, straining to hear anything beyond the pounding of my heart. Then came a sound that split the night, a gunshot. One, sharp and final. I flinched so violently that Lily cried out in fear. My throat closed as I covered her ears, praying she hadn't heard it. My mind raced with two equally terrifying possibilities: that Daniel had been shot, or that Daniel had fired. Either way, the walls of our safe little life had just crumbled into dust. I wanted to run down the stairs, to see, to know, but my legs betrayed me, trembling, rooted in place by fear. Lily's tiny hands anchored me, reminding me that I couldn't fall apart. Not yet. I pressed my lips to her hair, whispering promises I didn't know if I could keep. "It's okay, baby. Mommy's here. Daddy's got this." The words felt hollow, but I clung to them because the alternative was unthinkable. And in that suffocating moment of silence after the shot, I realized something I hadn't wanted to admit. Daniel had known this night was coming, and he had been keeping that secret from me all along. I couldn't stand it anymore. The silence after the gunshot felt worse than the sound itself, as if the whole house was holding its breath, waiting for me to move. My legs trembled as I pulled away from Lily, promising her I'd be right back. She clutched my sleeve with surprising strength for her small hands, her wide eyes pleading silently. "Stay here. Don't open the door for anyone but me," I whispered, though every word felt like it was splintering my soul in half. Leaving her alone in that room was agony, but I had no choice. The stairs groaned beneath my feet as I crept down, each step louder in the quiet than it should have been. My body felt heavy, but my mind raced ahead, filling with worst-case scenarios. My hand skimmed the wall for balance, slick with sweat. I was terrified of what I might find, terrified of what the shot had taken from me. My ears strained, searching for any sound. A groan, footsteps, anything. The air smelled faintly metallic, sharp, like the taste of a bitten lip. It wasn't until I reached the last step that I realized what that smell was. Blood. The living room was dim, lit only by the flickering lamp Daniel had knocked askew earlier. The door was half splintered, pushed in but not fully broken. And then I saw him, Daniel, standing rigid, his arms still outstretched, gun in hand, pointing toward a figure crumpled on the floor. My stomach lurched violently. There was blood seeping into the carpet, a dark, spreading stain that looked black in the low light. The man on the floor was groaning faintly, alive but fading. His face, partially turned toward me, made my heart seize in my chest. I knew him. I couldn't breathe. I stumbled back against the wall, clutching my chest as recognition burned through me. His hair was longer, his skin more weathered, but there was no mistaking the sharp jawline, the cruel eyes that even in pain glinted with something dark. It was Aaron, my brother who had disappeared 10 years ago, leaving behind nothing but questions and wounds that never healed. My brother who I had mourned as lost, maybe even dead. And now, here he was, bleeding on my living room floor because my husband had shot him. "Harper, stay back," Daniel barked, his voice raw, threaded with urgency. But I couldn't move if I tried. The world had shifted under my feet, everything I thought I knew about my past and my present tilting into chaos. Why is he here?" I stammered, my throat tight, words barely audible. Daniel didn't answer, his jaw locked, his grip on the gun trembling slightly now. My eyes darted between the man I had loved for a decade and the brother I thought I'd lost forever, my heart tearing in opposite directions. Nothing made sense, nothing at all. Aaron coughed violently, blood flecking his lips, and his voice was hoarse but cutting. "He never told you, did he?" His gaze flickered toward Daniel, then back to me, with a cruel smile twisting his face despite his pain. "You don't know what he did. You don't know why I came back." My stomach plummeted as his words sank in. My brother wasn't just here for revenge or chaos. He was here with a purpose. My eyes darted to Daniel, desperate for answers, but he shook his head quickly, as if warning me not to listen. That silence felt like a confession. The sound of distant sirens began to pierce the night air, faint but growing closer. Relief and dread collided in my chest. Help was on the way, but with it would come questions. Questions I wasn't ready to face. Daniel crouched slightly, keeping the gun fixed on Aaron, his voice sharp. "Don't say another word, not one." But Aaron laughed again, a rasping, broken sound that made my skin crawl. "You locked her away in lies, Daniel. You thought you could bury the truth forever. But I came back for her. I came back for my sister." I felt my legs give out and collapsed against the wall, sliding down until I was on the floor. My hands shook violently, pressing against my face as if I could block out his words. My brother, my husband, two men bound by a secret I didn't understand but could feel was monstrous. Tears stung my eyes as I whispered, "What truth? What is he talking about? Daniel finally looked at me, his expression one of pure torment. For the first time I saw fear, not of the man bleeding on our floor, but of me knowing something he had kept buried. The sirens grew louder, flashing red and blue lights beginning to dance against the walls through the broken doorway. But even as the world outside rushed toward us, time inside our home stood still. Daniel lowered the gun slightly, his shoulders sagging under invisible weight. Aaron's eyes gleamed with satisfaction despite the blood pooling around him, as if he had already won simply by planting the seed of doubt in me. And in that suspended moment, I knew our lives would never be the same. The shot had not just wounded my brother, it had shattered everything I believed about the man I loved. The flashing red and blue lights bled through the broken doorway like an omen, splashing our walls with colors of catastrophe. My hands trembled against the floor, still sticky where Aaron's blood had spread, while my heart hammered so violently I thought it might burst. Daniel's gun lowered further, his breathing heavy, his jaw clenched. But his eyes, they weren't on Aaron anymore. They were locked on me. It was as if in that single moment he feared me more than the dying man between us. That realization alone nearly broke me. The front door burst open with a deafening crash, and 2 officers stormed in, weapons raised. "Drop the gun, now!" one shouted, their voices ricocheting through the chaos. Daniel hesitated only a fraction before placing the gun on the ground, raising his hands slowly. I had never seen him look so fragile, as if the foundation of who he was had finally cracked under the weight of what we had just witnessed. The officers secured him quickly, pulling his arms back, and for the first time in years, Daniel looked small to me. Not strong, not protective, just small. Aaron groaned again, and the other officer rushed toward him, pressing a hand against the wound in his abdomen. "We need paramedics now," he shouted into his radio. I sat frozen, unable to move, unable to think clearly. My mind screamed at me to do something, but my body betrayed me. I couldn't decide if I wanted to cradle my brother in my arms or run as far away from him as possible. The contradictions clawed at me, ripping me in half. He had come here with malice, and yet he was still my blood, my family. Daniel tried to speak as they restrained him, his voice urgent, cracking through the haze. "Harper, don't listen to him, please. You have to trust me." His words reached me like sharp shards, each one cutting into the fragile trust that remained between us. My mouth opened, but no sound came out. How could I trust him when I had seen fear in his eyes at the sound of my brother's voice? How could I believe him when silence had been his answer to the one question that mattered most? What is he hiding? Aaron's voice, weak but defiant, rose again. "Ask him about the summer of 2012, he whispered hoarsely, spitting blood with every syllable. My heart seized. 2012, the year Daniel and I met. The year my brother disappeared. The year everything in my life changed. My throat tightened so much I could hardly breathe. The timing had never struck me before, never collided in my mind the way it did now, as if puzzle pieces had been scattered for years, only to suddenly fall into place under the worst possible light. The officers exchanged looks but didn't press for details. Their focus was survival, containment. But my focus, my torment, shifted entirely to Daniel. "What happened that summer?" I asked, my voice trembling, rising louder than I expected. "Tell me the truth." He looked at me, his mouth parting, words forming but not leaving, until one of the officers pulled him toward the door. He twisted in their grip, his desperation palpable. "Harper, I was protecting you. Everything I did was to protect you." His words hung in the air like smoke, suffocating, unclear. My body finally responded, dragging me forward. I crawled closer to Aaron, whose eyes fluttered between open and closed. His breathing was shallow, his body trembling with shock. "Why now?" I whispered, my tears falling freely, streaking down my face. "Why come back after all this time?" His lips curved into the faintest smile, bitter and broken. "Because lies rot in the dark, and Daniel's lie is the darkest of them all." His hand twitched, reaching toward me, but before he could say more, the paramedics rushed in, pushing me aside. They worked quickly, lifting Aaron onto a stretcher, pressing gauze against his wound, speaking in fast-clipped voices. I stood numbly, watching them carry away the last living remnant of my family besides Lily. My body felt hollow, as if I were standing outside myself, detached from everything unfolding around me. The sirens wailed again as they rushed him out, fading into the night. In that hollow silence, I realized my past and present had just collided violently, and the wreckage lay at my feet, impossible to piece back together. As Daniel was led outside in handcuffs, he turned his head toward me one last time, his eyes burning with anguish. "Please, Harper, don't believe him. Don't let him take you from me." I wanted to scream, to demand answers, to shake the truth out of him, but no words came, only silence. And in that silence, a decision began to grow inside me, small but unstoppable. I would uncover the truth myself. Neither Daniel's pleading nor Aaron's venom could be trusted alone. I needed to know what happened in 2012, and why that year had destroyed everything. The house was unbearably silent after the storm. The broken door stood ajar, the faint scent of blood lingering in the air, and Lily slept upstairs oblivious to the nightmare that had unfolded downstairs. I sat on the couch with a blanket around my shoulders, staring at the empty space where Daniel had been taken away in handcuffs. The clock ticked loudly, as though mocking me, each second a reminder that time had moved on without giving me the answers I so desperately needed. My brother's words looped endlessly in my mind. Ask him about the summer of 2012. Sleep was impossible. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw Aaron's pale face, his blood seeping through his shirt, and Daniel's desperate gaze as he swore he had done everything to protect me. Protect me from what? From whom? I pushed myself up and padded quietly to the small storage box tucked beneath the stairs, a box of old photos, journals, and forgotten pieces of my youth. My fingers trembled as I sifted through scraps of the past, searching for anything from that summer that might explain why my life had been split in two without me ever realizing it. The photographs told a story I had long ignored. There was one of me at 17, beaming at a bonfire by the lake, my brother standing beside me with his arms slung protectively around my shoulders. And then, nothing. No more pictures of Aaron after July of that year. The album skipped ahead, as though someone had ripped out the pages of my life. My throat tightened as I dug deeper, finding my old journal, its leather cover worn and edges yellowed. I hadn't opened it in years. I pressed it to my chest, feeling its weight like a stone. When I opened the journal, my own handwriting leapt at me, younger and far more innocent than I remembered being. Page after page recounted my longing to escape the confines of my small town, my dreams of falling in love, my joy at late nights spent with my brother. But then abruptly, the tone changed. Aaron has been acting strange, I had written in messy, rushed script. He comes home late, whispers into the phone, and won't look me in the eye. Something is wrong. I swallowed hard, my skin prickling as if those words were a warning I had never heeded. Further along, another entry chilled me to the bone. There's a man. Aaron won't tell me his name, but he says he's dangerous. He says if I ever see him, I should run. My stomach dropped. Could it have been Daniel? My pen had pressed so hard that the words indented the next page, desperate and urgent. I flipped ahead, but then the journal ended abruptly, pages torn out, leaving nothing but fragments of sentences and ink smudges where entries once lived. I stared at the mutilated book, my heart pounding with dread. Someone had stolen the story from me. I shoved the journal away and turned to my laptop, hands shaking as I searched through old newspaper archives online. The glow of the screen illuminated the dark living room as headlines scrolled before my eyes. Then I froze. A small article dated August 14, 2012 reported, "Local teen missing. Aaron Jamison, 19. Last seen leaving the home of friends near Willow Lake." My breath hitched, my eyes scanning the words again and again. My brother hadn't just drifted away. He had been missing, and nobody had ever told me. My own family had kept me in the dark. Tears blurred my vision as I clutched the sides of the laptop, rage and grief mingling in my chest. Why had nobody told me? Why had my parents, my friends, even Daniel, who appeared in my life mere weeks after that article, never spoken of it? A sickening realization seeped into me like poison. Daniel knew. He must have known. Perhaps Aaron's attack on us tonight wasn't random at all, but the echo of something that had been festering for more than a decade. My hands curled into fists. The walls of my home suddenly felt like a trap, closing in around me. I rose, pacing the room, my mind unraveling possibilities. If Daniel had been involved in Aaron's disappearance, then everything I thought I knew about my marriage was a lie. But if Aaron was the liar, if he had twisted the truth to turn me against my husband, then I was standing on the edge of betraying the one person who had given me stability and love. The dilemma was unbearable. Both men claimed to protect me, yet both men hid truths that left scars I hadn't even known were there. Who was I to believe? Who was I to trust? Finally, I pressed my forehead against the cold glass of the living room window, staring into the night as though it might hold answers. The sirens had long faded, and the town was quiet, but inside me, everything screamed. The summer of 2012, I whispered aloud, tasting the words like ash. Whatever happened then was the key. I knew I couldn't rest until I uncovered every secret, every missing page, every lie. And if that meant confronting Daniel in the sterile coldness of a police station, or facing Aaron in a hospital bed, then so be it. The hospital smelled of antiseptic and despair. My footsteps echoed down the sterile corridor, each one heavier than the last as I approached the room number the nurse had whispered to me. My hands trembled as I gripped the strap of my bag, rehearsing questions in my head, but finding no words strong enough to pierce the wall of silence that had built up over 13 years. When I reached the door, I paused, staring at the nameplate. Aaron Jameson, my brother, missing for over a decade, yet lying alive just a few feet away. My heart pounded like it wanted to break free from my chest. I pushed the door open gently. The room was dim, lit only by the glow of a machine that beeped in steady rhythm. Aaron lay pale against the sheets, his face gaunt, his arms covered in bruises and fresh stitches from the chaos of the night before. For a moment I couldn't breathe. He looked older, broken, yet unmistakably him. The same crooked nose, the same furrowed brow that had once annoyed me as a teenager. His eyes fluttered open, and when they met mine, something sharp flickered there. Not relief, not joy, but recognition, tainted with guilt. "Harper," he rasped, his voice raw and weak. The sound of my name from his lips sent a tremor through me, a ghost rising from the grave. I pulled the chair closer, clutching his hand, though part of me wanted to recoil. "Why didn't anyone tell me?" I blurted, unable to contain it. My voice cracked. "I thought you abandoned me, Aaron. I thought you left. All these years, I've been building my life on lies." His eyelids fluttered shut, as though my words were too heavy for him to bear. But when he opened them again, a single tear slipped free. "I didn't leave you," he whispered, his grip tightening weakly around my fingers. "They made me disappear. They told me you'd never be safe if I stayed." My heart stuttered in my chest. "Who?" I demanded. His lips trembled as if the name itself might burn him. His gaze darted toward the door, then back to me, frantic. "Daniel," he finally said, and the sound of it ripped through me like a knife. My body went cold, my breath shallow. My husband's name, tangled in the very disappearance that had haunted me unknowingly for years. "No," I muttered, shaking my head as though I could shake the truth away. "You're wrong. Daniel saved me. He saved me more times than I can count." The words tasted desperate, like I was begging them to be true. Aaron coughed, the monitor beeping faster. "Saved you from what he created," he hissed, his eyes burning now, a fire sparking behind their exhaustion. "He wasn't your hero, Harper. He was the danger. I tried to stop him, but I was the one they silenced. I paid the price for standing in his way." My mind reeled, a storm of memories colliding. Daniel's protective instincts, his sudden appearance in my life right after Aaron's disappearance, his refusal to speak about my brother, the way his jaw tightened whenever 2012 was mentioned. Could it all have been a carefully constructed cage disguised as love? "Why should I believe you?" I asked, tears streaming freely now. "You disappeared. You never wrote, never called, nothing. How do I know you're not twisting this because you hate him?" Aaron's chest rose and fell rapidly, the effort of speaking wearing him thin, but his eyes locked onto mine, unwavering. "Because I loved you too much to drag you into hell with me," he whispered hoarsely. "The night before I vanished, Daniel warned me. If I told you the truth, you'd be the one buried instead. He had people, Harper. Connections. He wasn't the man you think he is. He needed you, and he needed me gone. So I ran. Or rather, they made me run. And when I tried to come back last night, he tried to finish what he started." My body shook violently as his words sank in. Each one chipped away at the foundation of my marriage. I sat frozen, staring at him, unable to decide whether I had just heard the confession of a broken liar or the final puzzle piece of a nightmare I had lived blindfolded. The walls of the hospital room seemed to close in, the air thick and suffocating. If Daniel truly was the danger, then everything, the baby shower he never wanted to attend, the locks he always checked, the rage in his eyes when Aaron appeared, suddenly had a sinister meaning. But if Aaron was delusional, broken by trauma, then I was about to betray the man who had stood by me for years. Aaron's hand slipped from mine. too weak to hold on any longer. His eyelids drooped, and soon he was drifting back into unconsciousness, leaving me stranded in the limbo between his truth and Daniel's silence. The machine continued its steady beeping, indifferent to the war raging in my chest. I sat there long after, my tears soaking the blanket on my lap, knowing that no matter which path I chose, I was about to destroy someone I loved, or someone I had only believed I loved. The weight of the summer of 2012 pressed down harder than ever. The walls of the police station felt colder than the hospitals, as though the very building absorbed the grief of the people who passed through it. I sat across from Daniel in a small, windowless room, the kind meant to strip away comfort and reveal what lingered beneath the surface. His wrists were free, though a uniformed officer leaned against the wall, arms crossed, eyes sharp. Daniel looked tired, shadows beneath his eyes, but there was a steadiness in his posture that unsettled me. He didn't look like a guilty man. He looked like someone waiting to be misunderstood. "Harper," he said softly, his voice breaking through the tense silence. My name on his lips should have calmed me, but instead, it ignited something volatile in my chest. "You have to hear me before you believe anything Aaron said. He's not the brother you remember. He never was." I bristled, clutching my hands in my lap, knuckles white. "Then tell me," I said, my voice barely steady. "Tell me why my brother has been missing for 13 years. Tell me why he almost died last night. Tell me why he says you are the danger." Daniel inhaled deeply, as though bracing himself. "Because he is a master at twisting truths into weapons," he began. "Back in 2012, Aaron got involved with dangerous people. Gangs, drugs, debts that spiraled out of control. He owed money he couldn't pay, Harper. I tried to help him. I begged him to come clean, to go to the police, but instead he pulled me deeper into his mess. When I refused to cover for him anymore, he turned on me. He threatened to expose me to you, but not for what I had done, for lies he crafted to poison you against me." I shook my head, unwilling to accept or reject his words yet. The memory of Aaron's bruised face, his weak confession, clashed violently with the man I now saw in front of me, calm, rational, deliberate. "You're saying he lied all these years?" I whispered. Daniel leaned forward, his eyes burning with urgency. "I'm saying he wanted you isolated. He was jealous of me, Harper. Jealous that you trusted me, that you built a life with me instead of clinging to him. When he disappeared, it wasn't because I made him. It was because he ran, just like he always did when things got hard." The officer in the corner shifted, but remained silent, observing every flicker of our conversation. My throat tightened as Daniel continued, his voice thick with emotion. "I locked that door last night to save us, Harper. Not from strangers, but from Aaron. He wasn't there to reconnect. He was there to hurt us. Do you think it was an accident that he showed up armed, storming into our lives like a ghost from hell?" I saw the look in his eyes. That wasn't your brother coming back for love. That was a man coming back for revenge. His words sliced through me, leaving only doubt in their wake. My hands trembled as I tried to remember every detail of that night. The pounding on the door, Daniel's frantic voice, the chaos that followed. Could Aaron really have been the predator instead of the victim? "Why didn't you ever tell me this before?" I asked, my voice cracking. Daniel's face softened, guilt swimming in his eyes. "Because I wanted to protect you from the ugliness, from the truth that your brother wasn't who you thought he was. I thought if I carried it alone, you could move on, build a life without his shadow hanging over you. I thought I was saving you." Tears blurred my vision as I clutched at the edge of the table, my heart caught between two narratives that couldn't coexist. Aaron had claimed Daniel orchestrated everything, while Daniel now painted Aaron as the manipulative one. Both stories carried pieces that fit the puzzle, yet both demanded I accept a betrayal too heavy to bear. "You expect me to just believe you?" I whispered. Daniel's voice broke then, his composure slipping. "I expect you to remember the man I've been to you for 13 years. The nights I held you when you cried. The times I stood by you when no one else did. Does that count for nothing?" The officer cleared his throat, reminding us that time was limited, but Daniel didn't look away from me. His gaze held me captive, pleading for my trust, begging me to let his version of the past overwrite Aaron's. I wanted to scream, to demand proof, to demand something more than words. But all I had were two men, both broken, both swearing to be the savior while painting the other as the monster, and I was the battlefield on which their truths collided. When the session ended, Daniel reached for my hand across the table, his fingers brushing mine before the officer pulled him back. His eyes lingered on me until the door shut, leaving me alone in the suffocating silence. I pressed my forehead to the cool table, my tears falling freely. Somewhere between Aaron's whispers and Daniel's pleas lay the truth, but which one would shatter me less when I finally uncovered it? When I returned home from the police station, the house felt more foreign than ever, as though the walls themselves were holding secrets I wasn't yet ready to face. The silence pressed down on me like a weight, heavier than grief, heavier than fear. I walked from room to room, my footsteps echoing, every corner reminding me of Daniel's presence, every surface whispering Aaron's warnings. I wanted to collapse into bed and bury myself beneath the sheets, but instead, something tugged at me, a restlessness I couldn't quiet. It felt as though the house itself was urging me upward, to the attic I hadn't entered in years. The wooden ladder creaked under my weight as I climbed, each step accompanied by a dread I couldn't explain. Dust filled my lungs as I pushed open the hatch and pulled myself into the cramped, shadowy space. The air smelled of mothballs and old wood, memories trapped in silence. My flashlight beam swept across forgotten boxes, Christmas decorations, baby clothes I hadn't been able to part with, and piles of old photo albums. But then, in the farthest corner, half hidden beneath a stained quilt, I saw it, a plain wooden box, its edges worn smooth as if handled too often. My chest tightened as I dragged the box into the light. It wasn't locked, but it felt forbidden, like a trespass into a world I wasn't supposed to see. Kneeling on the attic floor, I hesitated before lifting the lid, my hands trembling. Inside, a collection of papers, envelopes, and photographs lay stacked in neat, deliberate order. This wasn't storage, it was preservation. I reached for the top envelope, my name scrawled on it in Daniel's handwriting. The ink faded with time. My breath caught in my throat as I slid the letter out and began to read. "Harper," it began, "if you ever find this, it means I failed to keep the past from reaching you." The words blurred as my tears welled, but I forced myself to continue. Daniel wrote about protecting me from the poison Aaron carried, about debts and betrayals, about a night long ago when everything spun out of control. His words echoed what he had told me in the police station, almost too perfectly, as if scripted for the moment I would stumble upon them. But there was something unsettling. Why hide letters if he had nothing to fear? Why write truths meant never to be spoken? I set the letter aside and pulled out a stack of photographs, my fingers trembling as I flipped through them. Some were of me and Daniel in our early years, smiling, carefree, untouched by shadows. But interspersed among them were photos I didn't remember ever being taken. Pictures of Aaron, younger, eyes filled with rebellion and fear. In some, he was with men I didn't recognize, men who radiated danger. In others, he was alone, looking gaunt, desperate. But the most chilling photo was of Aaron standing in our old backyard, his gaze fixed directly at the camera. On the back, written in Daniel's handwriting, were the words, "He always comes back." A cold sweat prickled my skin as I reached for another envelope. This one wasn't Daniel's handwriting. It was Aaron's. My breath faltered as I unfolded the letter, dated from 2014, 2 years after his disappearance. "Harper," it read, "if you're reading this, I couldn't get through to you in person. Daniel is not who you think he is. He keeps things. Keeps me. He says it's to protect you, but it's not. He wants control. He wants you to believe I'm a monster. Please don't let him erase me." My vision blurred as I clutched the paper, my hands shaking violently. 2 truths, clashing again, both preserved in the same box. I felt trapped between the pages, between the voices of 2 men I loved in different ways. Daniel's words were precise, protective, rehearsed. Aaron's were raw, desperate, begging. Both could be lies, both could be truths, and I was suffocating in the uncertainty. My flashlight flickered, casting long, trembling shadows across the attic. It felt like the house itself was holding its breath, waiting for me to choose which narrative to believe. My body trembled as I shoved the letters back into the box, unable to bear another word. As I pushed the lid closed, my flashlight beam caught something taped beneath it, a small key, thin and silver, hidden with careful intention. My heart stuttered as I pulled it free, the cool metal biting into my palm. A key to what? Another lock? Another secret? I stared at it for a long moment, my pulse racing. Part of me wanted to throw it into the dark and pretend it never existed, but I couldn't. The truth was pulling me forward, mercilessly, no matter the cost. My life had become a labyrinth of lies, and I was trapped at the center, searching for the way out. When I climbed down from the attic, the box clutched tightly in my arms. I knew my life had just shifted again. Everything I thought I knew was slipping like sand through my fingers. Daniel's truth, Aaron's truth. Now tangible pieces of both sat in my lap, staring back at me, demanding a decision. As I sat in the dim light of the living room, the key burning in my palm, one thought haunted me relentlessly. Maybe the real danger wasn't choosing the wrong man to believe, but discovering that both of them were telling the truth in their own way, and that neither version would save me. That night, I didn't sleep. The silver key burned against my palm, long after I had set it down on the coffee table, its weight far heavier than its size. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw Daniel's neat letters warning me about Aaron, and Aaron's frantic scrawl begging me to see through Daniel. Two truths colliding like storms inside my chest. At dawn, the decision became unbearable. I had to know what the key unlocked. My hands shook as I searched the house. Every drawer, every cabinet, every locked door I had ignored for years suddenly calling to me. The answer came in the basement, in the farthest corner behind old gardening tools and boxes of forgotten furniture. A small trunk sat against the wall, so ordinary it might have been overlooked for decades, but the lock on it gleamed, new and polished, out of place among the dust and cobwebs. My heart pounded as I dropped to my knees, the key slick in my sweaty fingers. When it slid in and clicked open, my stomach twisted as if I had just unsealed something alive, something that had been waiting. The air around me seemed to change, heavier, as I lifted the lid. Inside lay stacks of manila folders, neatly labeled with dates and names. I pulled one free, my eyes widening as I scanned the contents. Surveillance photos, grainy, taken from a distance, but unmistakably of me, walking to work, sitting at the park, shopping at the grocery store, page after page of my life, documented like I was prey under watch. My throat closed as I shuffled through more files, and then I froze. Another folder, labeled Aaron. I opened it with trembling hands and felt my world tilt beneath me. It was filled with police reports, mugshots, medical records, but none of them matched the Aaron I remembered. The reports painted him as violent, reckless, a thief, even implicated in an assault. But something didn't add up. The dates, the locations, they contradicted what I knew, where he had been when I was with him. I remembered nights we spent talking until sunrise, yet those same nights, the reports placed him in holding cells, or halfway across the country. My skin prickled with the realization. These records had been fabricated, planted, deliberately designed to blacken Aaron's name. But who had created them? And why were they in Daniel's hidden trunk? At the bottom of the trunk was a leather-bound notebook, its cover cracked, its pages filled with Daniel's handwriting. My heart lurched as I read entry after entry. He documented every encounter with Aaron, every fight, every threat. Yet the tone wasn't fear, it was obsession. He wants to take her from me, Daniel had written. He will ruin her if I don't stop him. The entries blurred together, escalating into frantic notes about protection and control. Then came the most chilling line. If Harper won't see the truth, I'll make sure she never sees him again. I dropped the notebook as if it had burned me. My breath came in ragged gasps, the basement walls closing in around me. Daniel hadn't been protecting me. He had been orchestrating everything, carefully constructing a narrative where Aaron was the villain. The box in the attic, the letters, even the photographs, they weren't evidence of truth. They were pieces of a puzzle Daniel wanted me to assemble in only one way. He hadn't just lied to me. He had rewritten my reality, one page at a time. My marriage, my trust, my entire life had been built on this manufactured fear. But then, beneath the files and notebooks, something even darker surfaced. A small plastic bag containing a woman's bracelet. I recognized it instantly. It belonged to Aaron's girlfriend, Marissa, the one who had disappeared the same year Aaron did. My stomach dropped. I remembered her soft laugh, the way she used to braid my hair during late nights when we were all still young. She had been declared missing, presumed runaway. Yet here, hidden in Daniel's trunk, was the one piece of her I hadn't seen in years. The weight of it in my hand felt like a death sentence. Tears blurred my vision as I stumbled back from the trunk, the bracelet clutched against my chest. Daniel hadn't just destroyed Aaron's life, he might have destroyed hers too. The full scope of his lies pressed down on me like a vice, each discovery twisting tighter until I could barely breathe. My mind raced with questions I wasn't ready to face. Had Daniel killed Marissa? Was Aaron gone because of him too? Or had I been living beside a monster all these years, blind to the danger in my own bed? I wanted to scream, but no sound left my lips. When I finally forced myself upstairs, clutching the key, the bracelet, and the notebook, I knew I couldn't keep this to myself. Daniel would be home soon, and once he saw the trunk disturbed, everything would unravel. For the first time in years, I wasn't afraid of Aaron. I was terrified of Daniel. And as I locked the basement door behind me, my hands trembling, one truth rang clear in my mind. My husband hadn't saved me that night when he shouted to lock the door. He had saved himself. The sun had barely set when I heard the familiar crunch of Daniel's keys in the lock. My heart pounded, adrenaline surging as I clutched the notebook, the bracelet, and the key to the basement like weapons. I had rehearsed what I would say, what I would demand, but nothing could prepare me for the sight of him stepping through the door, smiling, unsuspecting. He stopped when he saw the objects in my hands, his eyes narrowing, sensing that the illusion he had so carefully constructed was about to crumble. "Harper, what are you doing?" he asked, his voice calm, too calm. I stepped forward, the weight of years of lies pressing me into resolve. "I found everything, Daniel. The trunk, the letters, the files, Marissa's bracelet. I know what you did, what you've been doing all these years." His face twitched, a shadow passing across his expression. For a moment, he was the man I had loved, protective, strong. But then that mask fell. I saw the predator beneath it, the man who had rewritten my life. He laughed, low and chilling, pacing toward me slowly. "You really think you know the truth?" he said, eyes glittering with something dark, almost triumphant. "Everything you've seen, everything you've found, it's exactly how it was meant to be. You should be thanking me, Harper. I kept you safe from the real Aaron, from the chaos he would have brought." My hands trembled, clutching the evidence tighter. "The real Aaron?" I spat, my voice shaking. "He was never the danger. You were, and now you've hidden every proof of it for years." Daniel's smile vanished, replaced by fury so raw it made the air around us tremble. "You don't understand," he shouted. "If I hadn't controlled it, you would have lost everything. Me, our child, all of it. I did what had to be done." His eyes darted toward the basement, and I realized he had assumed I would destroy the trunk, that I wouldn't dig deeper. But I had. I had discovered every layer of manipulation, every shred of deception, and now the balance of power had shifted. I pressed the notebook and bracelet into his chest, my tears hot against my cheeks. "You call this protection? Hiding files, manipulating the police, fabricating crimes, threatening Aaron, and possibly what happened to Marissa? This is control. This is obsession. And it ends tonight." Daniel staggered back, shock and fury mingling in his eyes. He opened his mouth, but no words came. As if for the first time, he was stripped of his defenses. My resolve hardened. There would be no more lies, no more whispered threats, no more nights of terror under his carefully crafted protection. Suddenly, he lunged forward, but I was ready. I held the key in one hand and threw the basement door open, exposing the hidden trunk. The files, the photographs, the letters, all evidence of his manipulations were laid bare, and the harsh light of truth illuminated every corner. He froze, realization dawning, then desperation. "Harper, don't!" he shouted, but it was too late. The mask was gone. The predator was exposed, stripped of his control, and I saw him for what he truly was. I backed away, my chest heaving, as the police I had called earlier stormed in, alerted by my frantic messages. They moved swiftly, cuffing him before he could react. His screams echoed through the house, full of rage and disbelief, while I stood trembling, yet free, surrounded by the ruins of a life he had tried to dominate. The relief was overwhelming, a torrent of emotions crashing over me. Fear, sorrow, grief for the lost years, and finally, a sense of justice. As the officers led him away, I clutched the bracelet close to my chest, my tears flowing freely. The truth about Aaron, Marissa, and the web of lies Daniel had spun was finally revealed. I understood now. The danger had always been closer than I ever imagined, hidden behind the guise of love. My life had been a battlefield, and for years I had fought blind. But now I had the clarity to rebuild, to reclaim what had been stolen, not just from me, but from those Daniel had destroyed. That night, I sat by the window, the house quiet, the weight of fear lifting slowly from my shoulders. I realized the full scope of what survival truly meant, seeing the truth, no matter how painful, and refusing to let it break me. Daniel's shouts faded into the night, replaced by the whisper of the wind, carrying away the last remnants of his control. And in that silence, I promised myself, and my child, that nothing, no one, would ever manipulate my life again. The door remained unlocked, but I no longer feared what might come through it. I had faced the darkness, uncovered the lies, and emerged with the truth blazing like a torch. And for the first time in years, I felt a fragile, astonishing hope. The nightmare had ended, but my life, my real life, was just beginning. Thank you for staying with me through this story. If you want to discover more tales full of suspense, drama, and shocking twists, don't forget to subscribe to the channel and hit the notification bell. You won't want to miss what's coming next.